Here we are live again for another YEV. Unfortunately, Kevin's not here yet to say why not. So I'll just say why not. YEV, why not?
Why
So
not?
it's myself. Go on, sorry, Alex.
Why not?
There we go. There we go.
I'm fill in for the Welsh contingent here.
There we go. So yeah, I'm absolutely shattered, and the reason why Kevin's late is because we're at the EV festival today, and there'll be loads of photos on the socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and there'll be video coming shortly as well. So keep an eye out for that. But great day, Chargeheads area, EV conversions, modified EVs. But we're here to talk today about the best EV deals and discounts. So I thought we'd focus on best sort of personal lease deals, might see a few business ones, biggest discounts, and also an eye on the EV market. And I think it's only gonna, I think it might get that much better, and there's going to be more deals out there, and it's all because of the ZEV mandate. Alex, what have you seen out there about? Oh, we better explain what the ZEV mandate is. First of all, the ZEV mandate is basically. Oh, here's Kevin. Here he is.
Just made it in time.
Well, yeah, you're only a minute late. We won't, charge you for that one. No pun intended. So yeah, we're just talking about the ZEV mandate, Kevin, to start with, before we start talking about the discounts and the best EV deals and the best used deals out there. So just for everyone, the ZEV mandate, even though the U-turn by Richie Sunak in the UK from the everything new has to be electric or hybrid at 2030, moved to 2035, there was always this ZEV mandate. And what it basically was is every single manufacturer has to register 22% of their registrations need to be electric, which was, I mean, it's a pretty harsh task. And I think there certainly are some manufacturers which are really struggling. Obviously, your BYDs and your Teslas haven't got an issue. MG haven't got an issue because they've got some great, selling EVs. But there are quite a few manufacturers that aren't anywhere close to that 22%. And the problem with that, or their problem, is the fact that they are going to get a fine. Is it 15 grand, Alex?
15 grand per vehicle over that allowance. But they can buy credits from other manufacturers who are way over. So there are certain manufacturers who are obviously 100% EV, who they can, who then have essentially a bit like carbon credits, I guess, who you can trade.
Yeah, yeah. So that's their focus, and this is the reason why there already is, and there's going to be probably continued strong deals out there all the way up until Christmas. So this is just the start of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth mentioning. Sorry.
No, go, mate. Go.
Going to say it's probably worth mentioning. I mean, the SMMT figures came out this month, and they were at 22% or 23%. Sorry, 22 point something percent of new registrations in August were electric, which sounds massive in itself, and it was 11% up last year. But it's worth remembering two things with that. Obviously, positive steps in the right direction, but it's barely moved the needle. Overall, the industry so far this year is looking at about 17%, which is not, and it's been stagnant at that for a long time. The 11% increase this month that's taken it to 23% is almost all fleet registrations, and it's less than 2,000 vehicles more than last year. It's still growing, but it's not growing quickly enough. And that's the issue that I guess over the next if you count this month, the next 4 months of registrations have really got a lot of ground to make up.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And I think let's go straight into the deals, because we are known for skirting around this title, and then we can get into the detail after that. So let's give you the juicy information. So I think the first one, which I think Kevin pointed out to me, and I've seen it shared on a few of mainly X, I think, the biggest discount, which was, I think it was the MG5.
The MG5 and the MGZS. So they're doing those at 19,995, brand new. I mean, there'll be the entry level models, but I mean that's quite a cheap car now for a brand new EV, and it's not a budget car. You can say that the Dacia Spring is been launched, which is 14,995, but they're not in that category. And there's only 5k difference now. That's moved the needle quite a lot on used EVs. And I mean,
the gap, I guess, with those two is that a Dacia Spring, as good as it is only going to be as suitable as a single for a vehicle. The difference in the Dacia Spring and the MG5 and the MG ZS is that the MGs could both be a family's only vehicle, whereas I think you'd probably find the Spring was quite compromised. It is a second vehicle unless you primarily sort of town based.
Because I think the entry level Spring is non-CCS charging as well. I think that's AC only, and both the MGs are CCS.
But if you're only going to this, it's all you need, isn't it? So
yeah, true. I mean, I know some people that have had. I'm probably thinking my dad here. He's never used a public charger, and he's had his ID3 since nearly 4 years in Christmas, and he's certainly got a deal coming up. So he's keeping a keen eye on, hopefully, channels like this and, seeing what's out there. So I think that was the biggest discount that we saw. Have you guys seen any other big discounts? I haven't. It tends to be more monthly deals from what I've seen.
Yeah, there's a lot of finance deals out there. I mean, the Ford has extended the Mustang Mach-E one where you've got interest-free on their options one with the service plan and something else on it. But there was basically their interest-free one. But I mean, you've got to be wary, as talking to Alex earlier, with some of these interest-free ones, they can have quite significant deposits.
Yes. Yeah, we were just talking about that, weren't we, Alex? Like, oh yeah, £99 a month, but you've got to put in 10 grand. It's like, it's never realistic. So what I've done, go on, sorry.
The Comedy Deposit Award goes to, should we name it, or name and shame, or just leave? No. I was amused to see, being as I am. I feel like I'm constantly beating up on it, and I'm not trying to. But the representative
they've got to be named and shamed, otherwise they won't change their ways, Alex. And sorry for swearing.
This is a case all across the industry, isn't it? But you can get yourself into an ID Buzz for $315 a month, with a £17,000 deposit, which is massive money. And there was GV60 comes up with, it was about 300 and something. Genesis GV60, nice car, comes up at 300 and I've got that in the background somewhere here. 300 and something pounds a month.
I remember you saying, because you told me earlier 340. I was like, oh, I love a GV60, and then you hit me with a bombshell.
15 grand deposit. I mean, I suppose I know it's a representative example, but I mean, I have less of a problem, I guess, with some of the more expensive cars, I guess, like the Buzz, than I do with some of the stuff like, I mean, the MG4 is £99 a month. Somebody kind of mentioned to me on, see, they're really affordable. It's £99 a month. But somebody who values a £99 a month deal is not going to want to be putting down £9,900 as a deposit. It seems like an awful lot of money.
And this is exactly why, when I looked at all the deals, I was making it relevant, because having been in the motor trade, and I've seen those deals before, and they're ridiculous. You part exchange your car that's worth that sort of money, and you never get that money back. And the key thing with any lease, PCP, put as little money down as possible, and always recommend that to everybody, because you're never going to get that money back. So I'll start off with some of the cars that I found. And they're not sponsored by us. It just happened to be the one that I found. The website was eCars, and I found some corkers. And I always based it on 3 months deposit, so 3 monthly payments, and about 8,000 miles, which I thought was realistic, because I was basing it on a second car for me and the other half. And the best deal I found was a MG, because I completely ignored the Dacia Spring. Because, like you said, it's a safety rating for me is the one that it's like 1-star NCAP, which I'm sorry, but I wouldn't have my kids in that car. The TVR, okay, maybe up the road, but not as an everyday car. So it worked out to be £270 a month with 3 months down. So you're talking £780 deposit and £270 a month, which is that is a stonking deal, absolutely stonking deal. And just if you want to go performance, the X Power, which is the 0 to 60, I mean, the range goes from 225 on the long range to 200 on the X Power, but the X Power you get 3.8 0 to 60 and you get full drive. That was coming out about late 200s with the same 3 months down and 8,000 miles a year. And, you know, other than the Cupra being, Cupra Born being a bit more expensive than that, about 320, and then the Kona new shape Ultimate in red only, because they don't do a free color, was working out to be about 330. Those were, for me, the best deals out there. Oh, also the MG ZS was in that sort of £300 mark as well, long range. So those for me were all PCH. So you give them back at the end, smallish deposit, so less than £1,000. It's still a lot of money, but ain't 17 grand or 10 grand, is it? So for me, those were the best deals I could find. And if anyone who's watching now or watching later, make sure you whack it in the comments. If you see a good deal, please share it, because at the end of the day, we're all struggling with the funds at the moment. So if we can get people into electric car a better deal, then winner chicken dinner. Alex, Kev, what have you found?
The interesting thing I've seen is I've noticed a lot of reductions on used cars because of the new car. Because I mean, what surprised me is how low mileage some of these used EVs are. I mean, not for everyone, not a practical car, but I saw on one dealer a Smart, the original electric Smart, with 4,700 miles on it for just over 10 grand. I mean, and if you've got a city car, you're thinking actually that's quite cheap used. And I mean, with those sort of miles, it's going to be like a new car. There's not. Yeah, and I mean, the interesting thing will be to see what happens with ZS and 5 residuals now. If you can get in a new one for 90.
Well, Kevin, I've got that info, so I'll save that for after our new car deals, because I've been loads more focus has gone into the used side, because I'm a used car man, as you guys know. You know, sheepskin jacket, all the rest of it. So I'll tell you the cheapest MG5, MG ZS, and Kona, because I've got a close focus on that. But what about the new deals? Have you guys seen any more other good new deals about?
I focused on PCP with mine, looking at 2 different cars, 2 different options, and all manufacturer website deals. So I had a good scout around on the different manufacturer websites, see what was out there.
So let me just explain, because some people might not know. PCP versus PCH. So PCH is personal contract hire. So you don't have any option. You just give the car back at the end with the personal lease to PCH. With PCP, you can either give it back at the end, you can part exchange it and take advantage of the equity if there is any, or pay off the negative and change early, or you can pay off the guaranteed minimum future value at the end. So that's the main difference. If you want any more explanation, whack it in the comments and I'll answer it.
Yeah, generally from experience, when we've had a few PCP cars, it's usually you can, the option to buy at the end, you've usually paid off more than you should have done, and you end up with essentially, if you wanted to buy an equivalent car to the one that you would be giving up, handing back, it'll be cheaper than the market price because you'll have paid off more of it. Anyway, I had a look at the different manufacturer websites, and I'm going to shoot close to home with this and say that actually. So looking at the practicality side, you'll be unsurprised to hear me going on the same record here and saying that you get an Eberlingo for £300 to £295 a month, 7-seat, best part of 200 miles of range. So it's the long wheelbase version. I'm just going to bring up the. I've got a screen.
I thought you were going to go VW there, Alex. You know, you're saying close to home, and I know I'm a Tesla fanboy, and you're a VW. A bag man. So I thought you were going to go straight in the bag, but I completely forgot about the e-dispatch, mate. E-Berlingo.
E-Rifter. The weird, it's. I'm just trying to find the. I've got the details in the background, and it's not letting me bring it up, which is annoying. Where are you?
I've decided I need to a car called the E-Drifter.
Right, here we go. So this was 3.8 down, 295 a month over 48 months, 0% APR. Optional final payment of 12 grand. I mean, crikey, that's quite a lot of car for that. We have the Peugeot version of this with the pre-facelift one, which has got a slightly reduced range. I believe the new ones moved to LFP batteries if it's the same as the van.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was buried in the Berlingo press release. So I assume the passenger car version's also gone to LFP. Some slight refinements to improve the range. We've found with moving 3 small kids around plus luggage, we get 130 to 140 miles of range out of ours. It's charged. It's fully charged and back on the road before the kids have had time to kind of have a break and kind of and have something to eat. So we're often unplugging the car before the kids are finished. Anyway, not without means being an ad for the PSA passenger car vans. That seemed like a pretty good deal. If you need to move 3 kids around, and there's plenty of families out there who need something to drive mostly locally and sort of do intermittent long journeys in, it's a good option for that. PCP, I struggled to find anything that would beat bang for buck the MG4 X-Power. It is just stellar value. I mean, it's cheaper than the Cupra Born and got almost 200 horsepower more. It's same sort of price per month as the Abarth 500e. If you're looking for a high performance car, short of buying something used, you're not going to get better value for money than that. Cupra Born's not a bad shout there. There's £4,500 off on that one, and dealer contribution of, I'm just going to double check this rather than come out with something that's incorrect. I think it was 4.5. So they're doing, Cupra contribution of £4,500, customer deposit of £5,000. So yeah, that was not a bad option either, but it was still pricier than the MG.
Yeah, there we go. The MGs are, they are producing some cracking deals out there. Kevin, did you see anything different out there?
Most of the stuff is you either pay a big deposit, like Volvo have got interest-free, but again, it's with a 50% deposit on an XC40, so it's going to be big numbers. Or you've got, you are seeing the return of below the normal interest rate value on car finance again, so they're going in below some of them. I can't remember what the current interest rate is. It's
5.
So
yeah, they're all 1.9% APR on that Genesis deal, which is cracking. But I think it's getting that, for me, it's always getting that balance between, okay, we know that the MG is cheap, we know why it's cheap, it's from China, quality, and all the rest of it. So it's quite difficult to find that balance and in terms of sort of quality and the cheapness. And I think for me, I think it was probably the Hyundai Kona being like just over £300 if you want something that's non-Chinese, and they do look amazing. I do love the new Kona, and
they're genuinely a really long range one, because I know some people who've gone to Scotland in 2 of them, and literally that's from middle of Wales to Scotland, and it's 1 charge stop. I mean, you can't knock that, and it does charge at over 100 kilowatts, which is a massive improvement. The one thing I have noticed, people will say it's about the efficiency again, and banging on about that. It does make the difference if you pick the 17-inch wheels over the 19-inch wheels, and it's not an insignificant one. Even on WLTP, you're talking over 30 miles range difference in the official figures. But you can option them as a zero-cost option on the ultimate spec one, which they have in the fleety spec version of it.
Because when I looked into it, because I had Kona EV for 3 months at the end of last year, and when I looked into it, it was purely down to the fact that the smaller wheels are on A-rated tires and the other ones are on like C or D-rated tires, and it makes obviously it's not the size of the wheels as much as I would imagine.
To clarify, that's the efficiency rating, because there's the sound, there's the noise, there's all the different ones, and that's the efficiency one, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So it was literally the big difference in the kind of the rolling resistance in the tires and so on. Just staggering. It's a huge gap between the two, and I think I would probably still take the big wheels and just look for some tires to put them on. But yeah.
Need to get the 20-inch steels, the 20-inch steels that you mentioned last week from the what was it?
The
Scenic. Went for them.
Yeah.
But sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, and if you look in Europe, there's another one with a significant difference. Ioniq 6 is on 20-inch wheels, only in the UK, but everywhere else you can get it on the 18-inch wheels, and that's got a 50-mile difference in WLTP range, because again, it's the bigger wheels and only Michelin Pilot Sports in the 20s, and you've got normal, ordinary tires on the 18s.
There is there's a reasonable deal going on, which I'm just trying to find. So I did color code these so that they would be easier to find, and it's not cooperating to let me do it.
Sounds very organised. Good work.
Ionic 6 has got a reasonable deal going on it at the
They
moment.
must be doing good deals on that because they really haven't sold that many, have they? I mean, I've seen a couple on the road. There was one at the EV festival today. I don't know if you spotted it, Kevin.
Yeah.
I think they look great. I really do. They just remind me of the Saab 900.
It's getting a facelift quite early though, because there have been spy shots of a facelift one that's due. Is it due middle of next year? I think
they've already brought the EV6 out, haven't they? Facelift.
Yeah, and I would imagine that'll mean there'll be some decent deals in the old one. That's a fun car to drive as well. I like the EV6. Got a lot of time for the EV6.
Yeah, I did have a play with the GT one on Wednesday, so that's fun. Can be quite tame though. It's the drive modes make the world of difference. The eco mode, you can just drive it around town, no issues at all. Put it into GT mode, and it's like you could breathe on the throttle, and it's gone.
Talking about the new deals specifically, I think what I think will happen is there's going to be some based on the ZEV mandate figures that I saw, what percentages of electric registrations manufacturers are at. It was Renault. Renault have got a long way to go still. The VAG group have got a long way to go. Ford. I think that there were a couple of others. Suzuki are a non-starter because they didn't do a fully electric car. So I think that we're going to see some really, really strong deals coming from those manufacturers. So yeah, watch this space, and yeah, I'm sure we'll, as a weekly thing, I'm sure we'll put in each podcast, each live, we'll mention any extra deals that we've seen for sure. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later on in the chat as well. You guys got any more new stuff up your sleeve, or should I go on to a bit of used?
No, yeah, that's nothing on the new side.
So used, it's very exciting. So we talked about MGs earlier, about the big discounts. Now I've been focusing on MG5s and MG ZSs, and on Auto Trader at the moment there is an MG5. The cheap ones are the 51 kilowatt hour. They also do a 61 kilowatt hour. The 51 kilowatt hour, it looks like from EV Database, which is what I use, which I'm sure Kevin laughs in the face of in terms of realistic range. And found one for $7,500, which had done 110,000 miles. And then there was one for about 8.5 that done about 80 something thousand miles, which amazing in terms of price. And I think they were both exclusives, I think, from memory. So there's the Excite, which is the non-leather, the Exclusives, which is the leather high spec one, and then the MG ZSs, which is the smaller batteries. It's a 44 kilowatt hour. The range, realistic range, EV Database again, is about 130 miles, and they're also $7,500, but less mileage. So you're talking sort of a 99,000 miles and lower than that. So they start from $7,500. So, and both those cars, you know, they've got CCS, rapid charging. They've got CCS2. They've got all the kind of mod cons you expect, and they are certainly the MG5, and I've been told the ZS as well. They are proven to be reliable cars with like higher mileage. And if anyone here's different, please let us know. Please let the YEV listeners, and certainly me, because those are the two cars that we're focusing on. So don't buy the cheap ones, because I'm going to try and get there first. Really good deal I saw as well yesterday. Hyundai Kona from Hyundai at Hereford. It was a pre-facelift, 39 kilowatt hour, which seems to be quite rare in the pre-facelift. There seems to be more 39 kilowatt hours in the facelift. 10,300 pounds, and it done, I want to say 60,000 miles in the red color from a Hyundai dealer. I thought that was pretty amazing. And then there was a 80-odd thousand mile one, 64 kilowatt hour for about 11,300. That's a hell of a lot, car for the money. Then the facelifts, a much better looking car on a 39 kilowatt hours. They start from now about 13 grand. I love the facelift more than I like the other one, but you do have to pay up to about 14, 15 to get the 64 kilowatt hour for the facelift.
Yeah. The interesting thing with those is, remember the recall because of the battery issue?
On which one, sorry?
So on the 64 kilowatt hour Kona, remember there was a big recall because there was some issues about the way the batteries were assembled.
Oh, yeah, vaguely remember that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they're actually still getting through them, because I know people now who've had their recalls on 5-year-old cars. So they'll be the ones to watch because they're having a new pack. So you could potentially have a 5-year-old car that's had a brand new pack on it. Not that Hyundais are big for degradation, because I've looked at them and they seem to really have managed the battery quite well. So they hide all the degradation from you in the top part. But I've joked in the past with Alex, because they're really efficient. Maybe they're not really efficient. Maybe they've got a much bigger battery. So the reverse of Dieselgate, but you've actually got an 80 kilowatt hour battery pack fitted in it, and it just doesn't let you see that.
I hid it in the glove box.
Those cars are my go-to. If I'm recommending like a kind of real world EV for people, the Hyundai, Kia, so the Soul, the Nero, and the Kona are my 3 kind of go-tos. And then the Kona is the cheapest of the 3. It's slightly less practical than the Nero, and presumably the Soul as well.
While you guys chatting, let me find the price of the Nero, what they start at, because I didn't think about looking at that, but I know that they are more expensive.
Last time I looked, they were slightly pricier than the not much, but slightly pricier than the Konas.
They've got a slightly bigger boot, haven't they?
Yeah, they are bigger. They're almost the same size. The rear legroom in them is almost the same as the Sportage, despite the fact the vehicle's actually quite a lot smaller. Because we considered getting a hybrid when they first came out.
Well, there's a private one for 13 grand, 108,000 miles, and then there's one from a dealer, 13.5, 70,000 miles on a 20 plate. So actually, looks like the 64 kilowatt hour e-Neros are cheaper than the Konas. Let me just double check that. That's interesting, because did they do the smaller mode bollocks? Did they do the smaller battery in the e-Nero?
I'm trying to remember. I've got a feeling they didn't at first.
Yeah, I've not seen many of them. But then you don't see many.
Yeah. See, I should know this because I did all of the initial press launches for these cars, so I should know which ones came with which. But yeah,
I think I've literally just missed it because they were always more expensive, you know. Let's just have a look.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, I found when I was looking at used, there's like 2 extremes of EVs. Like the ones that you've looked at are quite high mileage, but then you've got ones that have done virtually no miles and 3 years old. You're thinking, has it, like a 22 plate Smart with 4,000 miles on it? Where's it actually been with 4,000 miles? I know they're a smaller battery, but that
one in Hereford, the Kona one sold, but now there's one for 10,950, a Kona, 64 kilowatt hours, 77.5 on a 2020. Wow. That's cheap, isn't it? Well, it looks like they're still, they're tumbling away because, again, these new deals, that's surely going to bring more cars onto the market. Oh, here we go. Mark Greenwood, thanks for popping a comment in there. My 21 4 Plus Nero was a belting car. Yeah, and my neighbour had one. He loved it. Absolutely loved it. That's the Kia Nero. And 4 Plus is one of the high spec
cars.
Yeah, well, I'm in one at the moment, the new Nero EV. And yeah, it's a 2-spec, which some people say hasn't got enough kit on it. But actually, when you think about it, the stuff it hasn't got are things that could be considered gimmicks. So, I mean, I miss LED headlights, but it's got nav, it's got all the safety kit on it. It's kind of, it just does the job. And actually, you can probably live without power fold mirrors.
I'm a weirdo. I much prefer manual tailgates. I know you're a bit of a snob when it comes to that stuff, aren't you, Kev?
I like tailgates.
I hate them. I think they're the work of the devil. Awful things.
Rusty's a rally spec non-electric tailgate car. It just because it just goes up too slowly, right?
It's more that it closes too slowly, or sometimes it does. If you're trying to get stuff into the back. To be fair, the ones that pop open when you swing your foot underneath, as opposed to just the electric, okay. But yeah, you do it more often than not end up waggling your foot underneath something that's not having it. So no, I'm not a fan.
The speed is for the theatre of it.
I used to do it with the Audis all the time, and they just never used to work. It just it looked like a complete plank.
Yeah.
As I say, the speed is just for the theatre of it. The effect of it opening the power tailgate. You don't see them opening the curtains in a theatre really quickly. It's the same thing with a power tailgate.
The difference is you're not getting rained on in the theatre, so there is that.
Oh, hopefully not.
Now, I'd be worried about the curtains if that was the case.
Is this all going to change? I mean, is this potentially between now and this is what goes through in my head, million miles an hour as usual, is the fact that is the October budget going to make a big difference? And is now the time between now and that budget coming out? Could that be the window of opportunity of great deals? And in October, it's literally a bum fight because something's going to come out in that kind of budget where it's going to be like, okay, fuel duty goes up, or something goes up and something twists and changes the demand, changes the demand for electric cars versus ICE, and then it just goes bananas. I've got an inkling. I'm going to make the prediction. I think that's going to happen. I could be wrong, but I genuinely think that they're going to somehow make that happen. What do you reckon, guys?
I think fuel duty is a tricky thing to play with. I don't think the 5 pence cut will last, but I think they're going to have to be very careful about putting it up because it's an inflationary measure. I think they're going to have all sorts of problems if they try and put it up. And we all know that. I mean, there's all sorts of criticisms about fuel retailers not passing that cut on to consumers, but you can guarantee that if there's the 5 pence cut is removed, that will be passed on. I mean, yes, that will obviously then affect consumers, but it's tied in with an enormous amount of other household pressures and so on that are going on at the moment. And there's been warnings, haven't there, that the budget is going to be potentially going to be painful for, also they've warned it's a kind of we need to be realistic about this kind of situation. I mean, I don't see it alleviating pressure on household budgets all that much. The main thing that I suppose they need to do is to continue to ensure that the fleet sector, the traditional, by which I don't just mean fleet in the wider sense, but I mean actual traditional company car and salary sacrifice fleets, both kind of part of the same thing effectively, are supported for the near future, because if they seem quite happy at the moment to be propping up the new market for EVs, which obviously then creates a used market in a few years. So I think the main thing that they need to do now is just, I think, accept where they are, which is that 4 out of 5 new EVs go to companies, go to businesses, and just make sure that they support that market and don't let the bottom drop out of that, which they have done in the past. I mean, the late 2000s, post B word in the UK, we had kind of the company car tax rates were let to slip with EVs, and it kind of went from 0% to I think 13%, and then back down to 0%. Can't allow that to happen now. It needs to be consistent support is what they need to ensure that there's the market is being fed with new vehicles.
Well, it's up your neck of the woods, guys. This the Lost Welshman. Thanks for commenting. Are new EV buyers, in for a shock when they next sell, i.e. not keeping as much value as they once were? I think there is only a couple. Sorry, you go, Kev.
Yeah, it depends when you bought, because a lot of the people now because a lot of the press is saying about the shocks with them, are people who bought when all the prices were overly inflated. Because there was that period, you think now with the pandemic, it's about the 3-year mark where people would change those cars. And they're coming to the end of PCP deals where they paid over the odds because there was not enough supply and too much demand. I remember, just post-pandemic, you could buy an Ioniq 5 and sell it for more used a couple of weeks later. And that was never going to be sustainable. So I think if you're buying now, I think you take that hit's been taken. So you're probably in the right point purchasing round about now. It'll go down, but I don't think we'll see the massive drops that we have seen. It's all those people who've come to an end now and thought we're expecting a big sort of, like Alex said with the PCP, a bit of equity in it to get your new car. And then suddenly it's like, oh, and you've got to walk away because there's no equity left in it.
Yeah, your best move then. Your best move then is probably just to kind of accept it and just maybe purchase the vehicle that you've got, I guess. I think there's going to be people who are that. Anecdotally, I've heard there is a rise in people getting to the end of PCP deals and buying a car, getting the finance on the rest of the car and keeping it on the retail side of things. I think obviously the PCP and the guaranteed future value. So when you take out a PCP deal, they kind of work out a pessimistic used value and then add a little bit, subtract a little bit more onto it, so that the chances of you being in negative equity, of it being in negative equity are very low. So with most people buying on a PCP deal, they're kind of shielded from that a little bit anyway. It's just, I think the shock they might find is that with used values the way they are at the moment, and with interest rates rising, somebody who say bought, say a Kona 3 or 4 years ago, goes back into a showroom and finds the equivalent vehicle now is significantly more expensive per month than it was when they bought their last one, and they get less for their money.
I can give you a real example, actually. My dad bought in December 4 years ago the ID3 first edition, or whatever it was called, the first one, and they were doing crazy deals on that because they were trying to register as many electric cars as they could by the end of the year, and it was a massive discount. I think he got in the end. I think it was like £8,000. So that was a good example of a strong deal before. I think, yeah, that was after COVID, wasn't it? So he's coming up to it, but his guaranteed minimum future value was about, I think it was £16,000, and VWFS have offered him 12, and he's nowhere near the mileage. I mean, he's done like 15,000 miles at best. It's probably less than that, and I think he based it on like 10k. So that car's just going to be going back. So I think there's going to be a plethora of people just giving back their cars. I know if I was anybody out there, most people tend to take out a 48 month, which is the longest term on a PCP, but it does tend to be that you can actually get out of your PCP once you've paid more than half of the payments off, and you can give it back and just walk away. So I think there's going to be a lot of people who are switched on to that, and they'll give the car back and take advantage of the really good lease deals that are out there at the moment. Or some people might have already done that because there have been some really strong deals last month. So I think we're going to see a lot of lease deals, PCP deals coming in onto the auction. So I think there will be quite a bit of supply, which will bring prices down a bit more. So maybe my prediction of there being a change in October is not actually that realistic, actually. So I'm going to go back on that now. I think they're, yeah.
The interesting thing is,
it's so tricky.
Before we move on, is what I wonder what they'll start doing is, I've never seen this happen before, but remember there was a brief period where there was not many EVs and the values did drop more. So, when you had the early Renault Zoes from like 2015 and things like that, I wonder if some of the PCP companies will do what they did with the Zoe. So we went to get rid of our Renault Zoe in 2015 because there was less money left in it than that. And the PCP company came back and said, how about if we offer it to you for this much? I've never seen that happen on a PCP before, where the guaranteed future value, they've said, well, we'll give it to you for this much. Yeah. I wonder because at the end of the day, if they're stuck in the auctions and they're losing money on them, it might be financially sensible for them to come back and say, well, actually, how about you give us this much? Because they've saved all their fees. And if a car's stuck in the auctions, it's not making them any money.
And quite a lot of the time, a lot of the auctions are holding cars back because and I know that, I'm not going to mention who, but I know that the big auction houses, some of them do that. So, because they don't want to affect prices too much, because obviously, ultimately, for them, they want to make sure that they're getting as close to cap as possible. But I don't know, because I don't buy used cars, but I'm sure if I asked, that a lot of these electric cars are way behind cap, so current auction price, I wouldn't be surprised. And I must admit, I'm tempted just to go and speak to, and there's companies out there that do that, so buy straight from auction. So I think that might be a good chance of buying getting a better deal, although there are risks with that, of course.
There's so much discussion, isn't there, at the moment about retail demand for EVs, and I think I I've kind of reached the point where I'm fed up of hearing that it's because of bad media coverage or because of government deadlines shifting and all the rest of it. I actually think there is still consumer demand for EVs. I think it's just that cars in general have become a lot more expensive over the last 3 years. And I think because of household budgets being squeezed, you're simultaneously finding people who got a PCP 4 years ago are coming into a showroom perhaps quite interested in getting an EV and just finding they can't afford one. Regardless of the fact, when you're a retail buyer, obviously you don't get the same incentives that you get as a fleet customer. If you're lucky enough to get a company car or be on a salary sacrifice scheme, then you do get those kind of discounts and those tax incentives thrust your way, but you just don't get that as a retail buyer. And I think we've had a decade of very cheap cars and people have become accustomed to it. And I think people are now coming into the showroom and they're finding that they can't necessarily afford as much car as they wanted to, regardless of powertrain. And I think what we're witnessing at the moment is a softening of retail demand for cars rather than a softening of retail demand for electric vehicles. I don't think people are that swayed as en masse by people talking about fires in car parks and people talking about, all the other stuff that gets swirled around about EVs. I don't think it's a big misinformation campaign that's led to a softening of the market. I just think it's a softening of the wider retail market for cars, and it's affecting EVs slightly more because they are still, on the whole, more expensive than combustion engine vehicles.
Don't think it's just cars.
I disagree with that. I think, there might be an element of that, but I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I think it's a mixture of some people that are so anti it, they're feeding the horse with people being negative about electric cars. I think the infrastructure piece is still a thing. 50% of homes don't have access to cheap night rate, and let's be honest, in most occasions, unless you take into consideration the overall model of like servicing and longevity, if you're running it into the ground, it does work out to be not too dissimilar in terms of running costs. If you're having to use public chargers, can be more expensive, as I'm sure you guys know. So I think it's the infrastructure piece, and I know that there's Turbo Charge and Gully, and there are ways of charging if you haven't got a driveway. But I think that's a huge part of it still, and I think it's knowledge about some people have got driveways, and still people are like, oh no, I'm not sure about the range. It's that 1 to 5 journeys a year that they think that they're not going to make it. I think it's all of those together, but I think those are the main issues. I disagree with the price thing that you said, because I'm pretty sure if you take a petrol auto, Hyundai Kona or Honda Civic or whatever you want, and you compare it to the age and mileage, this is on used cars, there's actually the electric car will be a much better value car from an age and mileage point of view. And I was listening to the EV, I think it was another EV podcast. We won't mention the name. I can't remember what it was. But they were saying they got the details from one of the main insurance companies. And actually, of a whole, electric cars were cheaper to insure. But there were certain electric cars which were way, way more expensive. Teslas were actually a lot more expensive. But as a whole, it was £40 a year cheaper for an electric car versus an ICE car. And I'm sure that the Range Rovers probably won't help that. And there's certain, cars that you probably want to take out of that mix. So I think it's all of those reasons: the infrastructure, the knowledge, and the home charging. That's where I see it. And yeah, those are what I think.
Sorry, go on.
I think in general, probably another factor is probably not as much, is that people are poorer. The thing that brought that to my attention was I was in shop, went to Swansea, and I saw a sticker for buy now, pay later on WH Smiths. And I was thinking, what did WH Smith actually sell that you need to buy now, pay later on? So It's things like that. You're thinking, well, maybe there is as well. People just haven't got the disposable income that they used to.
We've seen a growth of the fleet market last year. The fleet volumes were basically soaked up all of the growth in the market last year. It was not, none of that was going to retail. There's I saw a stat saying the average rise in, I think it was June 2022, the average rise in monthly insurance payments was like 50-60%. plus on top of that, energy prices, food prices, and so on and so forth. I think a big part of the problem, certainly not the only problem. I mean, the issues with infrastructure and the unknown, the change anxiety piece is still relevant. But I don't think we've seen I think that's still within similar groups. I don't think we've seen a kind of a growing of anti-EV sentiment. I think there is literally an issue with retail buyers just not being able to afford cars, full stop, regardless of powertrain, and that's certainly reflected in the registration figures as well. But I mean, that's just tightening of household budgets. Your money going into a showroom buys you less than it would have done 3 or 4 years ago. So it suddenly becomes harder to justify buying a new car at all. But yeah, I mean, from a used perspective, that's I suppose an interesting litmus test for what you can pick up and the demand that's there for it.
Yeah, it's.
I think we'd be closer to. I mean, as I was saying earlier, with the 17% that we are at the moment, I think we'd be closer to the 22% if the retail market if there was any real momentum in the retail market, and there isn't much of a certainly of a retail market for new cars as there was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. Actually, you can see with the pricing as well, the ones that have seen the biggest growth will be the more budget manufacturers that have been considered. You think MG has seen massive growth, but it's one of those things like I remember seeing it with the last credit crunch, where where Hyundai and Kia made big gains, where people who had a BMW and Audi still wanted a new car, but they stepped down a brand rather than not have a new car. They stepped down to what they considered to be the level, and that's where they made those big gains. But you've got now those brands which were more budget brands have gone up that level, and you're running out of budget brands. There's a lot of people, we're car people. There's a lot of people out there that actually use a car for A to B. They don't care what it is or anything like that. There are still people I talk to, and you ask them what car it is, and they'll say it's a blue one or a red one. They're not really that bothered. And I think
the blue one, I know that one. Yeah. Blue.
So there's people who will go in and now. Those people who will buy. There were people who bought the Dacia Sandero. Remember when it was 6,995 with black bumpers, and it had the kit for you to add your own radio. I mean, there were people buying those, and you're thinking, like, would people now? We'd like a high spec car is the problem in the UK. So there's lots of models that they don't do in the UK. I mean, I think me and Alex have talked about, you go abroad to Spain.
About it last week, didn't we? We talked about it last week.
Yeah, you go abroad to Spain and you see things with wheel trims and stuff, which you don't see in the UK. Mm-hmm. I mean, in some countries with one wheel trim because they've lost all the others. But
we've had a decade, as I say, all through the 2010s, where cars have been phenomenally cheap, and actually mortgages and so on have been as well. I mean, the house price rise in the UK is partly down to how low the interest rate's been in the UK, and we're now kind of experiencing the fallout of that, in that the house prices are still high, but the insurance rates have gone back up to where they perhaps should have been over the last decade or so, and the two are kind of bumping into each other and just causing everyone an awful lot of pain at the moment.
I don't remember when I was younger seeing as many brand new cars as you have over the last decade. I mean, I don't remember my parents and you didn't say people having a new car every 3 years, but that's become quite common. Most of the people I know will change their car every 3 years. So I think they've become more attainable. Maybe we're going back to it not being as obtainable now.
I think it's that increase in PCPs and lease deals. As I'm sure everyone can appreciate. A lot of people tend to be, I'll buy a car right into the ground, and that's my parents' kind of focus. I mean, my dad having a car on PCP was just like, unheard of. And I see the benefits of PCP, especially people who bought an EV, and the massive drop in money, because that guaranteed minimum future value is that safety cushion, if you like, because you got a guaranteed minimum future value of 16. If the car's worth 10 grand, it doesn't matter. You're not paying that 6 grand negative. You're just giving it back, which in this kind of market with EVs is actually quite a good thing. Bearing in mind, yes, I benefited from what Kevin was talking about earlier about the bubble on when I sold a Skoda after having it a day. But then again, I bought the cheapest Tesla Model 3 long range in the country at the time, and I've taken a big hit on that. So it's the market, and you can't. I think because we're car people and because we're interested in it, we probably see it more than other people. It's it can be quite tricky to predict. It's difficult to get it right every time. But sometimes, and this is the danger, I suppose, especially when you're looking at new cars and deals, that actually maybe you're sold on the deal, you're not actually sold on the car. So all I'd advise people is, if you're looking at a used deal, you're looking at a new deal, just make sure you drive it, because you might absolutely hate it. So don't just focus on the deal, focus on the actual car. You're going to be in it for 2, 3, 4 years. It's a long time to be in a vehicle, and make sure you get an insurance quote. Like I said, you could get potentially stung quite badly after going for a deal, and then, I need to do insurance. It's how much? $2.5 grand. You're like, bugger. So just make sure you don't just focus on the deal. Make sure that other elements you tick off as well.
The interesting thing as well is, from a kind of pulling the rug out from under your own feet perspective, and talking about little running costs through the year and so on, is that obviously EVs from next April will pay vehicle excise duty, so road tax, for the first time. And then they're levelling this across the market, which I think is a really odd thing to do in some respects, because the market is still
new that's come out. Because I know
sorry, go on.
I was going to say, because I know that on my Tesla, because it's over 40 grand when it was new, within the 5 years it pays quite a big tax. After 5 years, please explain to everyone, because I don't quite get it.
There's 3 different stages to this. So the first stage is that the free road tax, I'm going to call it road tax because that's just the term that kind of gets widely used, is being removed next April. So if you've got a vehicle that is currently paying 0 road tax, that will go up to about 20 quid a year, which means if you've got an early Nissan Leaf, for example, they will stingily charge you £20 a year, which I know is not much, but from the point of view of kind of, just trying to create, support the used market for these vehicles, somebody who's buying a 10-year-old, 10 to 12-year-old Nissan Leaf is buying a car that's got quite a lot of miles under its belt and there's a bit of wear and tear and so on. It's doesn't as versatile as, say, it's more of a second car. So I think you should put, I don't understand the logic in charging them road tax at all. Anyway, anything registered from, I think it's April 2017 onwards, will pay a flat rate regardless of what's under the bonnet, which at the moment I think is 180, 190 quid a year.
190.
So that's your... Sorry?
They've confirmed 190 when it happens.
Yeah.
So anything 2017 and onwards, no matter the CO2 emissions, that batteries, diesel, petrol,
diesel, hybrid, electric, fuel cell, everything will pay the same level. Here we
go, Mark Fowler. Good man. Thank you very much. It's 180. Good man. Thanks for sharing that.
Is that this year or next year?
Yeah, so it goes to 190 next year.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if I've got a diesel car that's paying £20-30 a year, and I bought it in 2013?
You're paying.
That'll still be the same. You'll get an inflationary rise. It's just they're removing. So pre-2017, they're just removing the 0 rate VED. So for things like a Prius from like 2000 and do you know what? I don't know when they went under 100 grams, but I know certainly a 12, 13-year-old Prius would have been in a free VED. Lots of diesels like your Golf Blue Motions and things would have been paying 0 VED.
Diesel 64 plate would be
they'll pay 20 quid a year, which is nothing, I know, but you could have lopped that off for the EVs, because the really early EVs with a decade of wear under them, just let them have. They're not high numbers of vehicles. Just let them have that for free. But anything from April 2017 onwards will pay 190 quid a year from next year. Anything registered from April 2025 onwards will also pay the expensive car supplement. Now, this again rises with inflation. This is for the first 5 tax renewals, and it will be about 400 quid a year. Now, the lunacy with this is there's already a discrepancy between plug-in hybrids and hybrids on this. So I was driving a Hyundai Tucson last year, and the plug-in hybrid was over 40,000. The regular hybrid was under 40,000. Now, let's assume I know there's a discussion about plug-in hybrids and whether you use them or not, but let's assume you are like me, a diligent user. You always plug it in, and so on and so forth. if you you would be already be paying 3 times the road tax on that vehicle for the first 5 years it's on the road. Next year, when this comes in, you'll have lots of examples of vehicles like the Astra's one, for example. So the Astra, there are variants of the Astra EV that start over £40,000. Owners of those vehicles for the first 5 years will be paying nearly £600 a year in road tax, which is nuts. It's just, whereas the petrol and diesel versions, which are under £40,000, will be £190 a year.
Yeah, and the other thing with that is quite a polluting diesel will be paying £20 or £30, which is actually an older one that you'd actually like to get off the road for air quality, because a lot of those cars will be Dieselgate era, so they're going to have really high NOx emissions more than likely, especially if people haven't had the modifications done.
Nissan Qashqai, I think, was pretty high on the list for one of them. You know,
I had a look. So out of last year's top 10 best-selling EVs, only one of them has an entire model range under £40,000. So only one of them will miss out on that expensive car supplement in top spec, and that's the MG4. 5 of them start at over £40,000. So 5 out of the UK's 10 best-selling EVs will pay £600 a year in road tax next year, from next year onwards, for the first 5 years they're on the road. And that gets added on to a lease, that gets added on to your running costs if you're getting a PCP. Even if you're the second owner, you'll still pay that. It just seems quite, I guess, wrong-headed to be. I can understand to some extent flattening the £190 a year, but to then, given there's still a price issue, I guess, with some EVs, there's a lot of them that are over the £40,000 mark. I think it seems wrong-headed to me to charge them £600 a year.
Mark's just mentioned here, he's put 108 for March. I actually renewed for 12 months in February this year. My logic being that if I renewed for 12 months, come again 2025, I get 12 months tax-free. Not sure if that works, though. Yeah, I think I tried to do something similar. I think I did something similar, because I think my test will be 19 September 19, so it'd be 5 years old. So I should just escape the big chunk, shouldn't I? So that's a relief.
RE Rifter is renewed in March next year, so we'll get another year. And do you know you can spend the top spec Corsa E is just under £40,000. So you can spend just under 40. It is under it, but you can spend £40,000 on a Corsa at the moment.
I agree with you, Mark. It is crazy that I think 40k plus car is a luxury. Sure, 15 years ago, yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's well, bearing in mind Tesla Model 3 short range with no spec on, it's 39 all the nines, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that's another good deal actually that I spotted. Now it comes to mind, $299 a month for a Tesla fanboy coming at me for a Tesla Model Y. $299 a month, and I don't think it was a massive deposit. I think it was $5,000, maybe less than that, which that's a pretty strong deal for one of the best. It is the world's best-selling EV.
It's worth jumping on that and just saying, with the BED thing, with the road tax thing, it's always based on the list price and not the transaction price. So if you've got a £41,000 EV and you're getting 5,000 off it, you'll still qualify for the expensive car supplement.
Yes,
not based on the transaction price.
Very good point. No, good for sharing that. That's good. I tell you what, I think we've definitely managed to put some key stuff in there, especially about the tax. That's really helpful, Alex. Thanks for sharing all of that. I think certainly you've helped my knowledge. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand, forget who's in power. The government do need to generate some money from somewhere. It's be interesting to see how else they do it in October. Let's see.
I think it's too soon to start hitting EVs though. When you've got, as the stuff we discussed here, all that issues with infrastructure and stuff, it will be another point for the anti-EV people to latch on to and say it clearly isn't working because of that. And that's what I'm concerned about. And I think with the £40,000 thing, everything is inflation linked. That's why the road tax is going to be 190 next year. Surely that 40k should be based on look at when that 40k was set up, and then what's inflation done. So it should move in line with inflation.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, every car will be in it eventually.
Yeah, I think all the EV haters are on my TikTok account, Kevin. If you need to find them, so they love hitting my channel. I think that's a wrap for today. But I think very importantly, there are some house. Well, there's a few things to clear up. Sorry, my head's done, especially after today's EV festival. Right, this week I've got talking about Chargeheads. I've got a really exciting video coming out Wednesday, which is visit to Eco Classics, where I get to drive a electric 911 Targa Classic with Nick from Eco Classics, Nick Mason, and also the Mika sports car, which is an amazing little beach buggy. And apparently Autocar are going to have their video out on the 18th, which I heard today. So I thought I'm going to get my video out early. So please support that video. Please share it. Please share and like this video and share it with your friends who want to know more about EVs, especially people that want a more balanced petrol head approach. And if anyone sees it on the socials, we had a great day, me, Kevin, the rest of the Chargeheads, and many more at the EV festival. So check out all of the stuff on there. I think that's it. How was your weeks, guys? Did you share anything, see anything in the EV world, e-mobility world?
I've got I'll be driving by the end of this week. I've got a Polestar 2 coming on test with the new rear-wheel drive setup, which I haven't had a chance to try yet. I've put the petrol car through an MOT, and it's still much to my frustration having charging issues, which is quite ironic considering we've got two EVs on the drive, and the one that can't charge its battery is the petrol one. I'm having to have an alternator handmade for it, refurbished up in North Wales and sent down. So I'm waiting to get that sent, and I've got a week of finding out what life is like without a driveway, because we're having the road around the back of the house is being dug up. So it'd be interesting to see what it's like leaning on public infrastructure for a bit. Wow.
Yeah, you can give us some info on that. In fact, the EV feed, is it Jordan? He's saying that you get £50 for doing a review on a public charger, so might as well take advantage of that to pay the very expensive fees they like to charge on the electric. What about yourself, Kevin? What are you up to?
I say goodbye to the Nero EV tomorrow, which it's been, as much as it's a Nero 2, I've actually quite enjoyed it. And again, it's a 300-mile range car driven gently. So, there are everyday cars that are under the 40,000 that can do 300 miles.
There we go. And I've had my first full week of my new job, and nothing that I do on Chargeheads has anything to do with Dynamon, which is the new job, just a haste to add. But next week I'm going to a Hanover e-mobility show, so hopefully I can share some pictures of that. Apparently the venue makes the NEC look like a postage stamp, so I can't wait to check that out. That should be really, really cool. Other than that, I think the MOT is coming up soon for Rusty, so it's nail biting time that hopefully everything looks after itself and I don't have to pay too much going on. Oh, we've got a mention here. When will we see the update on the Nginx, Tim? Thanks, guys. Good week. Well, just to let you into a little bit of a secret. I say secret, it's not really a secret, but I haven't shared it, is I need to unplug the Nginx and plug it back in, because I've had a few issues with it recently, which I will share on the channel, but it's probably coming in a few weeks' time because I've got quite a few videos stacked up at the moment because of the new job, but it will happen. But as if I could do it again, I would still recommend people to go down the Tesla Boost mode if they don't want the drift mode or traction control off. But again, I will share that soon, Mark. So watch this space, mate. But you guys, you got anything else to add?
No, not at the moment.
Cool. Well, guys, thank you very much for watching. Like I said, please share, please like, please comment as much as you can, and we'll see you again next week. I might not be here, so it will be Kevin, Alex, and George. You never know, I might be calling in from a different country. We'll see. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching and listening.
Bye.
See you in a bit.
Yeah.